Bob.
Okay, I'm getting disorganized.
You're getting acclimated.
Okay, the Transportation Advisory Committee of September 17th, 2019 is now called to order. Kim, would you?
Yep.
Okay, roll, please.
Mr. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Atkinson,
Here.
Mr. Jessic is not here yet, Mr. Lyman,
Here.
Mr. Simmons,
Here.
and absent is Mr. McEnroth, Mr. Tong, and Mr. West.
And Mr. LaSalle.
Well, Mr. LaSalle, yes, you're here.
Okay. First item is the minutes of June 18th, 2019. Does anybody have any changes they want to make to those minutes?
I do. I've got one.
Yes.
I just see one that says Mr. Lewis said Malala Avenue will be completely rebuilt in its entirety with the project. And while I'm sure I said that, I wanted to add the between Beaver Creek Road and Highway 213, because there's lots more Malala that we're not going to rebuild. So
Okay.
that's my only thing that I noticed that needed to be changed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All in favor with the revised minutes, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Agenda analysis, does anybody have any changes they want to make or additions to the agenda for this evening? Okay, citizen comments. I'm going to start that with a presentation I wish to make. And I'm going to come down there to make it.
You're the guy, so you can go wherever you want, and wherever you want to go, you're okay.
I'll do it from here. You can all do it. But I am representing the Park Place Neighborhood Association in this following information. We, representing the Park Place Neighborhood Association, are asking that the transportation system plan crosswalks on Holcomb Boulevard be raised in their priority. Park Place is experiencing the largest development of any neighborhood in the city, and Holcomb Boulevard is becoming a more dangerous street as we speak. I'm going to give you some figures to think about. The 2017 volume traffic survey by Quality Counts LLC shows at Holcomb Boulevard and Redmond Road a daily count of 9,370 trips. A 2018 transportation impact study by Lancaster Engineering stated, quote, a daily increase of 7,401 daily trips will be generated by the development of the recently annexed portion of the Park Place concept plan, unquote. Now that doesn't include the daily trips generated by the currently developing old airfield property, 98 new dwellings, or the recently annexed Sears property on Holcomb Boulevard, 124 new dwellings. Those could be an additional 2,220 daily trips going up and down Holcomb Boulevard. That comes to a grand total of 9,620 additional trips, more than doubling today's trips and challenging even the most nimble pedestrian. Compared to other areas of Oregon City, Park Place is a pedestrian safety wasteland. Let's compare some other streets in Oregon City and keep in mind that Holcomb Boulevard from Redland Road east to the city limits is a distance of 1.9 miles with no traffic signals, no stop signs, and no crosswalks. Malala Avenue from Highway 213 to Beaver Creek Road, a distance of 0.8 of a mile, has or soon will have 5 traffic signals and 2 crosswalks. Malala Avenue from Beaver Creek Road to Division Street, a distance of 1.4 miles, has 4 traffic signals and 2 crosswalks. 7th Street from Division to Singer Hill, a distance of 0.6 of a mile, has 2 traffic signals and 2 crosswalks. High Street from Singer Hill to 2nd Street, a distance of 0.4 of a mile, has 5 crosswalks. Warner Parrott Road, Warner Milne Roads from South End Road to Malala Avenue, a distance of 1.8 miles, have 4 traffic signals and 2 crosswalks. Washington Street from 7th Street to Home Depot, a distance of 1.4 miles, has 6 traffic signals and 2 crosswalks. And now it should be noted that at most traffic signals, there are 4 crosswalks. The Transportation System Plan lists 4 crosswalks on Holcomb Boulevard. Most are placed in good locations, but the one at Oak Tree Terrace couldn't be worse. To the east is a road hump that makes the sight distance very poor for seeing pedestrians at that location, so we propose that crosswalk be located further to the east near Tracy Lee Court, or further west to where the footpath emerges from Oak Valley Drive. Considering the projected increase in traffic on Holcomb Boulevard, we request that all 4 of the crosswalks in the TSP be constructed and be the pedestrian-activated light type. Other areas of Oregon City seem well served by these safety features, and the citizens of Park Place feel it's their time. And we'll look forward to a timely response. I must say, I don't have this written down, but I must say that it might be brought up that there's no warrants because there's no pedestrians trying to cross Holcomb Boulevard. Well, of course they're not. They're scared to death. Who would ever want to try to cross Holcomb Boulevard? And what we're doing in the Park Place area is we're trying to be proactive, get these things in before it's too late, rather than to be reactive when all these homes are built and people are trying to get through all that traffic. So thank you for your time. And please remember that I was speaking as a representative of the Park Place Neighborhood Association, not as a member of this committee. I want to make that very, very clear. Then we have another person who would like to speak on this matter.
Hey, Bob, will you share, you'll share your written notes with Kim so she can add those to the record?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Go ahead and pass it. And we're still on citizen comments here. Lisa Novak.
Am I on here? We'll find out if I'm not, right? Good evening, Chair LaSalle and committee members. I appreciate your time. My name is Lisa Novak, and I'm a resident of Park Place. Thank you for this opportunity to provide comments to the Holcomb Boulevard traffic document. The configuration of the boulevard is such that speeding is passively encouraged. Vehicles are roaring down the hill from the direction of Bradley Road, and posted speed limits are not followed. From the opposite direction, vehicles coming up the hill from the west speed up in the vicinity of Hunter and Holcomb because of the hill. Please keep in mind, because of this configuration, the hills, blind spots, along with the speeding, a pedestrian cannot predict a safe crossing. This includes school children and commuters crossing the road for the bus. Keep in mind, mailboxes are on the south side of the road. Park and sidewalk are on the north side, as well as the school. We are forced to cross the road. Coming out of your driveway on a garbage pickup day, it's pretty scary. To keep my comments brief, I have itemized them in bullet form. On page 14, Exhibit 3 of the document, the map includes subdivisions only up to 2016. Since then, many more homes have been built, and how many more are planned? Here's a rhetorical question. Did I read correctly on the document that the most recent year of a Holcomb review, speed limit review, was in 1978? Did I read that right? Don't have to answer. Let's not forget the 2004 plan that was was never implemented, or at least maybe 10 to 20% was. It was a beautiful plan. A lot of time and money was spent on it. On page 16 of the report, Exhibit 5, nearly all the red dots indicating folks that believe the speed limit should be increased or remain at 40 are either outside of Park Place or on the far outside boundary. I don't think those red dots should be considered the comments. The document does not take into account the near misses, the yellow double line crossing, nor the racing. The road, the configuration of the road invites racing. Let's also keep in mind, vehicles are getting larger and tend to creep into the bike lane, not to mention the boats and RVs. The document states that between 2013 and 2017, there were 21 incidents. 11 of those were involved injuries. That's someone's life being impacted. Also, the data does not include information from 2018 to 2019 and does not include the near misses. The document does not consider construction vehicles and their impact with the current construction, the annexation, and infill. It also does not take into account the future development of the county buildings, nor the apartment building currently under construction. The document states that Holcomb is used as an arterial. Of course, there are very few north-south streets. There's no way to exit the neighborhood without using Holcomb or Forsyth. Speaking of arterials, let's compare other designated minor arterials in Oregon City. South End Road, similar configuration as Holcomb, with 35-mile-per-hour speed limit and traffic calming measures. Lynn Avenue, similar configuration as Holcomb, and the speed limit is varied from 25 to 35 miles per hour and does have crosswalks. Washington Street, north from Abernathy Road to Home Depot, the speed limit varies from 30 to 35 miles per hour, no residences, does have crosswalk and left turn lane at the end of the trail and Amtrak station. Abernathy Road, 35 miles per hour and a left turn lane. Holcomb Boulevard, nothing. With all due respect, the time has long passed to make improvements to this road. Now, I'm not able to mention this, but I will anyway. Today on Nextdoor, if anyone is on Nextdoor's social media, there are posts where a bus driver was passed and flipped off while the kids were disembarking from the bus. This is a routine occurrence. So again, I thank you for your time. Please help us. Please do something before something very serious happens. Thank you.
We kind of inadvertently, I'll be with you a minute, William, inadvertently moved into the new discussion on the Holcomb Boulevard corridor review. It was kind of a combination that just happened. Don't ask me how, but it happened. William?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. My name is William Gifford. I live in Oregon City. Committee member, I was going to make the point that the agenda says that citizen comments are supposed to be for non-agenda items.
Yes.
And your comments and Lisa's comments were specifically about an item on the agenda. I have comments to make. Should I wait till the appropriate time, or should I?
You should wait, and the citizen comments that we made, that I started with, were specifically in regard to crosswalks. They weren't in regard to the study of Holcomb Boulevard speeds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item 5, or does anybody have any questions or comments?
He had a citizen comment.
Do you have any more? Does anybody else have a citizen comment that's on something that's not on the agenda? No.
Okay, next item is item 5, new business discussion items. 5A, Holcomb Boulevard corridor review.
So Dana Webb's our city engineer. She's gonna present this topic. So I think you've all met Dana.
will eventually come up.
Dana, I can't remember, but if your slide presentation talks about why we're bringing this topic to them, but this was a request by the TAC, right?
I think it was a request by some citizens. I'm not sure if it came through TAC, but there was emails to staff from citizens.
Okay.
I think we've kind of over the years talked with different groups of citizens about Holcomb. And so what we opted to do was similar to what we did for Central Point Road year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And so as you heard, Holcomb Boulevard is a minor arterial, and the intention of a minor arterial is to serve local traffic to and from those major roadways. So I've just made a couple of slides that had some of the visuals from the packet. So this is a visual of the corridor
We're not getting them on the screens here.
They're not part of the packet.
Oh.
Yeah, you have to look up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, they are, except for the one slide, they are all in the memo. I just thought it would be easier if we could all see the same image. So included in there is an aerial photo from 1999, which shows what the corridor looked like then. As you can see, it was a rural, underdeveloped area of the city. This image shows that same area in 2018, which is the most current aerial photo that we have available. Excuse me. So you can see it's changed quite a bit. New housing developments going in regularly. Between 1969 and 2017, we had 515 new single-family homes built along the corridor, with the majority of those occurring between 2000 and 2009. So those kind of give you a visual of how that corridor's changed. Pulling from the packet as well is information. The city collects traffic data, both speed and volumes, every 3 years. And so I've pulled the information from 2011, 2014, and 2017. And so on these images, the solid blue line shows the posted speed limit, and then the dashed lines show each of those 3 years what we call the 85th percentile speed. So generally, the 85th percentile speed is that speed at which, at or below which 85% of people drive in a given location under good weather conditions and visibility, and is considered the maximum safe speed. And so this kind of shows you that as we get closer to Redland Road, we see those 85th percentile speeds are lower. So as you're coming kind of through that tight curve and down the hill, but east of, Front Avenue, we're seeing higher than the posted speed limit for our 85th percentile. So ODOT uses that 85th percentile as a guidance for their speed limit setting. This next slide shows, as was mentioned earlier, those volumes. So we have volumes going back a little bit further, so you can see that the corridor is seeing higher growth. Those ADTs over 9,000 are closer to Redland. As you get further east toward Barlow, we see much lower. Essentially, that's all those neighborhoods accessing Holcomb and going towards Redland. And so that's kind of what we see on that piece. So this is the one image that is not in the memo. So this goes with the crash data. So these dots are the crashes in the corridor. So the reason it only goes to 2017 is that is the last full year that ODOT has published of the crash data. So it kind of funnels through the police departments, through to ODOT, they analyze it, and then they publish it. So that's the 5 years of crash data. So looking at the corridor, the blue dots are property damage only accidents. The yellow dots are injuries, and where you see a red dot is a fatality. So you can see on the corridor, the majority of those accidents, which are listed out in the memo, happen closer down towards Redland Road. There are, as you can see, a few here and there. So this is an image not in the memo. As was mentioned earlier, there were 21 crashes. Majority of those crash types are rear end, likely due to lack of left turns, high speeds in the corridor, and in many instances, the crash data noted driver inattention. So that's based on the police report that's filled out. Those crashes tend to be during daylight hours and when the roadway is dry. So we're not seeing a large number of nighttime crashes or during rain. So during those times when it's dark or wet, people are likely driving a more appropriate speed, which would lend to less crashes.
Hey Dana, if alcohol or drugs were involved, does that data show up here? Would that data show up here?
It does have, there is a place where it can be noted, and I think, I thought there was one that may have had a note, but I may not have put that in here.
That's all right, I was just curious.
Yeah, so when you look kind of through the full list of crashes, you know, you can see where it was noted if it was a single car accident. So, you know, property damage only where a vehicle left the roadway. I think there was one where they hit a mailbox, another where they hit a tree. But I did not look at the severity of the injuries. I just noted if there was an injury. So we put out a survey. We shared the link to the survey through many of our committees. We posted it on Nextdoor and social media. We got 262 unique submissions. I say unique submissions because occasionally if someone hits the button twice, I will get 2 submissions. I reviewed those, and if there were duplicate email addresses, only counted that as 1.
You caught me.
There were a few. Who knows if maybe they thought, oh, this didn't go through. And then I did also check based on address. And on those ones where we have duplicate addresses, I just did a very quick look to see if it looked like it was 2 different people from the same address submitting. So kind of just double checking those. Almost everyone gave their address, which was helpful for the map showing that. There were a few that chose not to. We got the most responses from Nextdoor and social media. So one of our reasons for collecting that information is so we know which of those outreach mechanisms reach the most people, so we can focus on those and work on that. So this slide shows those survey results. 106 of the responses wanted to keep the 40 miles per hour. The 35 mile per hour had 63 responses, 59 responses for 30 miles per hour, and a few folks that would like to raise the speed limit. Although 25 miles per hour was not a choice, in the comment section, some folks did ask for it to be dropped to 25. So this is the same list of feedback that is in the memo. You know, some people that like the speed limit, some that don't, various comments. So I just kind of threw those up here so that you kind of had an idea of the type of feedback that we received. And then this slide is kind of zoomed in so that you could see those color coding dots. And so you'll see on the west half of the corridor, and I kind of look at the corridor, that highest peak as the break point. So that west half generally, I think, supports a lower speed limit. The east half, maybe not so much. And then you can see there are dots throughout the city from people that had taken the survey. So this is sort of that presentation of all the information. From a staff perspective, we would recommend asking ODOT to look at dropping it to 35 mile an hour, which is more consistent with our other minor arterials in town, but the survey results are another aspect of that. And so we're here tonight to kind of present that to you and get your feedback on if we proceed with asking ODOT to review the corridor, or if we take the community feedback and say we're going to stick with the 40. So we're here to collect your feedback.
Any questions?
A quick question. So we could request different speed limits. It's all 40 right now, but we could have
Yep.
a section that'd be 35 and
Yes,
40.
we could just ask that they look at sort of that west end, and so that is an option as well. We didn't lay the survey out to kind of pick that kind of level of detail, but that's definitely something you guys could recommend.
And if we just ask ODOT to do the whole survey, would they split it into sections? Or do we have to specifically tell them that we want to identify the lower west side or the east side?
If we ask for them to look at the whole thing and they only think half of it should be lowered, then they would make that.
They would make that determination.
For the areas east of the city limit, is that county-owned property? Has the county engaged in this discussion about the speed limit setting?
I'm looking at the locations where the respondents were living. I see quite a bit, like Ms. Note mentioned, quite a bit outside of that area. How valid would those respondents be with a valid opinion of what goes on in Holcomb Boulevard when they live clear down in Gaffney Lane and areas like that? I mean, it's just a question that I would kind of wonder about.
Yeah, so we didn't restrict the area to a certain group of citizens, so it was open to anyone
Yeah,
to share.
yeah, okay.
So it's kind of up to you to decide based on that feedback, your direction.
It's been my experience, though, that the citizens inside the city and outside the city, on one side of the city or the other, have, if they have an opinion, they choose to share it. And we don't decipher that. I think the map kind of speaks for itself. Our recommendation is to pursue the speed study and pursue a reduction of speed. And a lot of that has to do with not just the survey, but years of community feedback, just like we heard before the topic was presented. And I don't know, well, we got one more speaker on that, so I don't know at what point you want to listen to that, but I know I personally have been to a lot of neighborhood meetings where, the desire is that the city advocate more for the neighborhood when it comes to speed. And, I think our leadership is very interested in protecting its neighborhoods to the degree we can, and speed is one of those ways. And the concern I have, and I don't know if you remember on Central Point, we had kind of a similar concern, which was, well, what if they come back and they suggest a higher speed limit because of the 85th percentile?
That was going to be my question, is how much weight will ODOT give to the 85th percentile? Because that did look like it would warrant a higher speed. So are we going the wrong direction and asking for them for that feedback?
Yeah, my sense is that, I don't know, we had talked today a little bit about reaching out to that ODOT, because I think it's still just one gentleman who does those speed studies, at least one supervisor who oversees staff maybe that do those. But my sense is because of, the other thing that has been, the point that's been made tonight by, I think, both speakers, or both, citizen comments was, it's not just what it is today, it's also, there is a fair amount of development potential there. So more side street connections and more crossings. And, I think we could point out to them things like, people have to cross the street to get to their mailboxes. And so that combined with the fact that, I think any county road coming into city tends to have higher speeds, you know, and so is that really what we want for a more urban dense, you know, and I think that the gradient of Holcomb Boulevard has a lot to do with why folks maybe take so long to slow down or never slow down. It's just kind of lends itself to that. But the question is really, if you had more pedestrian crossing activity, would that be a safe speed, given some of the, I mean, it is kind of a straight boulevard with the exception of that one large curve, but if you look at Holcomb Boulevard and the way it's developed over the years, it's got a lot of humps and high spots and low spots to it, and ditches, etc. So I have a feeling that ODOT, with this information and maybe some input from staff, would be able to get to a 35-mile-an-hour recommendation, but
Does the 85th percentile doesn't kind of support that, does it?
does not.
It didn't on Central Point Road either.
But the city would have, the city doesn't necessarily have to go by ODOT's recommendation. They can go plus or minus their recommendation. I think it's 10 miles an hour.
Yeah, Dana and I talked about that this morning. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but I think I thought it was 5.
Maybe it's 5, yeah.
But I believe that's true. We'll have to verify that.
So if their recommendation came back at 45 miles an hour because of the data, we're just right back to the same 40-mile-an-hour zone at best.
It
We
seems
can
like,
check that mileage piece before we ask for the study, but
so drop my kids in the morning at Holcomb and then I take that route down to 213.
or 213. Yeah.
I mean, you got kids waiting for a bus. I mean, the cars are going quite fast down that stretch, so it doesn't seem quite the safest stretch of the road out there. I mean, you're wanting people to walk, but then you're kind of making it a little bit sketchy.
We're recommending the speed study, so I'm not sure. if
Well, I know,
we're
but the question is, do you have to do you need a speed study to regulate the speed?
Yes.
City can't take an action to reduce the speed without speed study.
Yes. The exception of that is the new rule on the taking a 25 mile an hour to a 20 mile an hour.
But how does that work if the speed study comes at the 45 miles an hour?
I think that's where that change in the corridor, so the slide where we look at 1999 and what it looked like, and then we look at 2018. And so with Central Point Road, our concern with that was we wanted to lower the section adjacent to the county, but our 85th percentile speeds on our existing section showed higher than 35. And so we were nervous they might recommend 40. And kind of in those discussions, it was, the context of the corridors changed. We're seeing, different things. Kind of like we talked about in the memo, there's 20 side streets and over 50 driveways on this corridor, even at this level of development. And so they really start to look at some of those pieces as well.
Will they take into consideration the concept plan and the number of homes that are being looked in addition in making their decision, or are they only going to base it off of the current data as of today?
We can share the information with them.
Okay. Because what I'm hearing is that a lot of it is not going to be, it's going to be 40 or 45 is probably what the information and data says right now, but I think what I'm hearing is comments from citizens and everybody else is we're all trying to look to lower it. So is the ODOT plan really going to get that accomplished for us?
Can we make it a safer street by putting in more crosswalks, which would then lower the speed?
I don't believe crosswalks will slow down speed unless you design a road to make it slower. Just putting paint on the road is not.
No, I mean if they were pedestrian activated crosswalks.
Well, they're not necessarily a speed control device.
They're a safety device, which by a byproduct is the cars slow down.
I would agree the average speeds would go down if people were using those.
Yeah.
Because, in theory, those crossings would slow cars while the crossing happened, and the resulting data from that would be a lower speed. If there's no one using that pedestrian crosswalk, I'm not sure that the speed limits would drop. You'd like to think they would with the signage, but, signage isn't that effective. I don't think more signage on Holcomb is necessarily going to affect that. I think enforcement will.
Or traffic calming measures?
Yeah, we're talking an arterial here, so, we still got to, make sure that we're providing lane widths that are wide enough for trucks, and we've got some places where we're constrained by existing curbs and ditches, so it's a little more, we would never see speed humps, for instance, along there. We could do more with, like flashing signage, like what we put on the curve. The county did do a road audit on Redland Road, and just looking at Redland Road in particular, things like intersection ahead signage, they did a lot of that, which I think is effective if you're if you're unfamiliar with the road. Can you go to the next slide, I think? To me, this slide was kind of interesting in that there's not a bunch of traffic coming in off the county. So if you look at averages, most of those speeders are living in the city. That's typical of what we see even in school zones. The folks who are disobeying the speed limit, obviously there's folks in the county that are doing that, but lots of times in neighborhood traffic, the speeding that we see is at 7:45 to 8 o'clock when, parents are taking their kids to school, which is kind of frustrating. That's kind of counterintuitive. You think they'd be the safest drivers, but often they're rushing to get the kid to school.
They're late for school.
And so, I don't know. I think we can ask some questions of the ODOT traffic study folks to make sure that, that question about, is there a couple of zones along this that we look at, knowing that we have 85th percentile speeds? I think we asked this question when we did Central Point. Do you remember what their kind of response was, Dana? Was it?
That's kind of where they take in that context of the neighborhood and those changes. The last time the speed limit was officially changed by ODOT, 1971. No, 1978. So it's been a while since they've looked at it. They haven't seen the changes to the corridor. We had kind of this similar one on Central Point, and they did recommend the 35 for the whole corridor, where we were actually seeing 85th percentiles of the section posted 35, closer to 40, and so we were nervous they would increase the speed limit, and we were, honest with them and clear that we don't want it raised, we actually want it lowered, and so they took that into account. Okay. So previously, on Central Point, I attached the whole memo, as well as a letter from TAC that kind of provided that citizen input and community request. So if there was a letter from TAC and we wanted to pursue ODOT looking at the speed limit, then we would submit it with that request of 35. So in here you can see from Redland to nearly Front Avenue does support that 35 mile an hour based on the 85th percentiles. It's, we could put a narrative with our request, not to look at just the numbers, but to take into account what actually is in the corridor and what we see.
I think the other little piece that was reminded of tonight was the Holcomb plan does have more desire for pedestrian activity and pedestrian improvements along the boulevard. That might be another piece of information that we referred to with our review, but we think it makes sense to go ahead and pursue the study and advocate for the lower speed.
I want to make one more comment about the county area of this project, because the county recently adopted Vision Zero, which basically wants to have 0 fatalities and 0 serious crashes. I don't know if the city has the same thing, but at least in the county portion, that the county would, their goal was to reduce crashes and fatalities. So getting them on board with this project, I think would be good, because they want to increase safety as well.
Okay, thank you, Dana. We have 2 citizen comments on this issue. Michael Ard and William Gifford.
One more.
No?
5B. Get one.
Oh, okay.
Thank you anyway.
Yeah, I'm a little bit ahead of myself here, aren't I?
Yeah, so I just submitted a form for speaking on this subject, and just because I had some relevant experience that I thought might be helpful to this discussion. Specifically, my name's Mike Ard. I am a professional transportation engineer with Ard Engineering, been practicing for over 20 years, and my experience actually includes doing numerous speed studies on behalf of the Oregon Department of Transportation. So I'm familiar with their process and their rules, and what I wanted to shed a little bit of light on for you is how they determine the design speed for a roadway and establish speed limits. And they do have some very specific rules for that. And the rules actually vary depending on the roadway jurisdiction as well. Their rules have changed a little bit over time, and it has been several years since I've done a study for them, which is why I pulled up their speed zoning manual to make sure that the information that I provide you is current. What it does say in here is that the primary factor in determining the recommended speed shall be the 85th percentile speed. So they do consider other things. In fact, their speed zoning manual has been updated to include that they consider citizen comments now, which is something that definitely was not the case previously when I was doing these. But they also have a very salient line here in it that says the recommended speed shall not be reduced more than 10 miles per hour below the 85th percentile speed. So that establishes a minimum floor for the speed zoning. So if your 85th percentile speed is coming in at, say, 43 miles per hour, they could not go lower than 33 miles per hour, and they will not post a speed that is not at a 5 mile per hour increment, which means that could go as low as 35, but certainly could not go to 30 based on that data. And if you're looking at a data point that is above 45 miles per hour, then you're looking at a situation where you can't lower the speed limit below 40. I will also say that they consider both eastbound and westbound simultaneously in the speed studies. So where you're looking at discrete eastbound versus westbound speeds here, you'd have to kind of amalgamate those two to get an 85th percentile overall speed number to determine whether you believe it's likely that they could reduce the speed or not. But that's kind of their constraints. Again, I said that it's a little bit different depending on the jurisdiction. I believe their rule still is that for an ODOT facility, they won't lower it by more than 5 miles per hour, but they give a little deference to local jurisdictions that have preferences for their roadways as well. There is one other option that I have seen done, and I don't know whether it's something that could apply here. But as I recall, there is some multifamily housing in the area, and I don't know whether it specifically qualifies as multifamily housing, but I'm picturing the development that is on the northwest side of Holcomb Boulevard in the vicinity of Holcomb Elementary School. So there's some subsidized housing there, and I know there are duplexes in there. I don't know whether that qualifies by itself. I know that apartment buildings do. But when you have access to multifamily housing, that can be considered a residence district by virtue of that. And if they rescind the speed limit, then the speed limit in a residence district is by statute 25 miles per hour, which would be a very significant reduction. I don't know whether that's possible, but it is something that you could look at as an alternative and at least explore whether that could be done in that vicinity. It does sound like The western end of this corridor is the primary concern. I can tell you that I grew up in the late 80s out on Bradley Road, which was out toward the east end of the map that was shown there. And I rode my bike and walked on Holcomb Boulevard all the time. The traffic volumes were way lower, I'll say, at that time. But even then, I would actually, if I was riding my bike at night on the road, I would pull off of the side of the road into the ditch and try to hide myself in case a drunk driver noticed me and accidentally steered in toward me. So I was nervous about it at that time. I can just imagine what people are going through now on that corridor, so I can sympathize with that concern. But, you know, if you're trying to lower the speeds, I just wanted you to be aware of those opportunities and constraints as far as navigating the rules of ODOT, and it looks like you probably couldn't go any lower than 40 miles an hour, but it may be possible based on the data that I'm seeing there.
And thank you very much. It's good information.
Yeah, send me a bill.
One other thing about the concern of 45 miles an hour, them raising the speed limit, I think that's pretty unlikely based on the speed data that I'm seeing here and the policy that allows reducing speeds by up to 10 miles per hour. So I don't think you'd end up in a worse situation than you're in right now if you explore it.
Well, especially it's kind of encouraging that they consider citizen comments. That's kind
That's
of
why we
different.
That's why we've changed our
thinking.
ways since Central Point Road. That's fairly new requirement, but.
Okay, our next item is 5B, Malala Avenue.
So we put together a letter for you last time. And I don't recall, did the chair sign the letter or how, yeah. So we'd like to move forward with this probably before your next meeting. So can we get at least a head nod or motion or whatever you want to do for us to write us a letter, and then we'll have either Bob, you or
Henry.
Henry.
Henry or Sedemar. Yeah, we entertain a motion to have the city request a speed study on Holcomb Boulevard from Redland Road to the urban growth boundary to the east.
Second.
A quick question. If we had the county sign on, will this speed up the study? If there more, it won't make any difference.
I don't think it'll speed up the study. I'm not sure, given the jurisdictional differences there, whether the county would do that. They might provide a letter of support. I don't know. We had the same issue at Central Point Road. Did they?
We coordinated with the county at that point, but I don't remember specifically. I know we talked with them about we're changing out our sign and that coordination of sign changing, but I don't know if they were interested in looking at Central Point out in the county.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessary with the information that I recall being required for the submittal. We don't need that.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed, so make a letter. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is 5B, the Malala Avenue Streetscape Project.
So Henry, at least, I don't recall if any of others made it to our 60% project open house for the Malala Avenue project, but at that meeting he asked for our next transportation advisory meeting that we present that information. So I'm here to go through the project and give you an update. So if you recall, this is about an $8 million project, 7.8 to be exact. Of that, we got a Metro grant for 3.8 million, and the balance of that is paid using Oregon City system development charges and pavement maintenance fees. We're also doing some utility work, so we're going to tap the utility funds for some of that. So, and again, the project boundary for the most part, is from Beaver Creek Road to Highway 213. There's an exception, two exceptions to that. On the 213 end, we're doing our best to stay away from the 213 facility, because what we've heard from ODOT is if we get too close and start, in fact, if we affect their detection, their signal detection on Malala Avenue, that is likely to trigger additional signal improvements, including upgrading all the signal, the ADA ramps, and maybe even signal replacement. So we're going to have to back away from that as best we can. We still have some striping changes there that we'd like to implement, but we don't think that's going to trigger anything with ODOT. And then on the other end, we're going back to Colton, which is the entrance to the Safeway or Hilltop Mall area, and considering some lane reconfiguration there. But the original intent of the project was for from Beaver Creek to Highway 213, included 3 pedestrian activated crosswalks and replacement of 2 signals. That scope has changed a little bit in the, the Colton to Beaver Creek Road restriping is kind of an add, as is a signal at First Street. So, and, you know, there's been a fair amount of outreach on this. The open houses, I would say the first one was somewhat effective. The second one seemed a lot more well attended. I think that, I should back up. They're both effective. It was just not good attendance at the 30%. We had better attendance at the 60%, and a lot more social media outreach, project newsletters. I don't remember all the statistics, but I think we sent out over 900 newsletters to businesses and residents, property owners along the corridor, and there's been some interest in the project because of some of the things that we're proposing to do in there. Some of it's got support from the neighborhood, other ones not so much support. It's kind of like the speed study on Holcomb. Some people want it faster and some people want it slower. That's kind of true for Malala Avenue. One thing I'll say about Malala Avenue, which is it's a challenging corridor because of the wedge that you kind of, you know, Beaver Creek and Malala Avenue are the 2 main arterials through there, and they basically create kind of a wedge, right, with commercial in the middle of those. And then all the side streets are, it's a technical term, cattywampus to Malala Avenue, so that none of them are really squared up. So that combined with, you know, our intersection spacing standards, there was none of that back when that happened. That was an old ODOT facility that kind of crossed through our community, and then development happened how it happened. So there's a lot of compromises with this project that we wouldn't necessarily see in new development, which makes some of these issues where, you know, one person or one group would want something one way, and, you know, we work with our engineering group and they suggest it's really not the right industry standard. So we've been kind of struggling through that a little bit. But more recently, just because we weren't getting a lot of feedback through online surveys or through our newsletters, Dana's phone number, I think, is published in all those documents, and she's not getting much in the way of feedback. So one of the suggestions that our city commissioners made, or one of our city commissioners made, was, can we do a pointed, you know, knocking on doors throughout the area on the commercial side, especially because some of the things that we're proposing involve what we call limitations to access management or access management, and sometimes that has an impact on the business because they're used to having a driveway there, and we're suggesting, well, you can still have a driveway there, but maybe you can only make left turns in and out of that driveway. And so we prohibit the right turns once you put a median across that driveway. So it has, I would say, had a little controversy to it. I think we're coming to terms with that and learning more and more about the reality of what we can do along that boulevard in the right-of-way that we have. We are getting a little bit of right-of-way as well. I think there's 15 properties that we're getting right-of-way where we need a little more, you know, when the original property was platted, we didn't have we didn't ask for more sufficient right of way, and now we're needing that. So, project characteristics, is this showing up on their screens? No? Oh, okay, sorry.
Do the toggle. If they switch the toggle, it should go from agenda to the screen.
Did everybody stop showing?
No? Okay, so,
It's not the part of the packet.
So the project characteristics, obviously, one thing that we're going to show you is the restriping proposal that we're talking about between Colton Place, which is the Safeway entrance, and Beaver Creek Road, and converting the 2 through lanes to there's a single northbound left and 2 through lanes that we would convert switching, southbound. Malala at Beaver Creek future northbound.
Southbound, right?
Should be south, yeah.
Should be southbound.
The dual left turn southbound would be implemented with the project.
Right.
There would be a future project that would implement the northbound dual left turn lanes.
Right.
Oh,
So
going towards county.
So we're going to talk about the southbound turn lanes, but yeah, there's also a future need for northbound dual left turns as well. Pedestrian activated flashing mid-block crosswalks, so we'll talk about those. There's 3 of them. Buffered bike lanes, signal replacements and lane reconfigurations at Claremont and Gaffney Lane. New traffic signal at First Street. Driveway controls and again, access management. Widened sidewalks, I think for the most part, we're running 10 feet wide sidewalks on the west side of the roadway. For the most part, we're not going to be replacing much of the sidewalk on the east side. And then we've got a cross-street banner proposed and a gateway welcome feature.
Quick question on sidewalks, we have them both sides of the road for the full length of the project?
Yes.
Is it done?
Yes, they already exist on the east side, the full length. They don't necessarily exist on the full length on the west side. So we'll be completing those, and for the most part, they're all getting wider.
Wide 10?
Say that again?
Wide 10-foot sidewalk?
Well, 10-foot sidewalk includes a furnishing zone, which has got tree wells and streetlights and garbage cans and amenities like that, and then a ped path. So it's really about, my sense is for a boulevard like that, we'd like even more width, but then we'd be into more private property. So this piece is something that wasn't included in the original plan set. As we were looking at the through traffic numbers on Malala Avenue, a lot of the through traffic doesn't necessarily stop along the corridor. They just are headed through Oregon City. And so in looking at just traffic calming along Malala Avenue and the fact that the Malala Avenue segment is a smaller segment than Beaver Creek Road, well, despite the fact that we get a lot of traffic on Beaver Creek Road, this proposal would, by virtue of conversion of one of the through lanes, encourage traffic to use that turn lane. That's kind of what our traffic consultant is telling us. We also think that during construction, this is definitely going to be a better solution to try and move traffic away from the corridor during construction. And we're thinking a lot of that change may play out after construction anyway. So we like this concept. I think what we heard from the community concern about the southbound right turn onto Beaver Creek Road and vehicles wanting to make that turn, but having to deal with a pedestrian that might be in the way, trying to make the cross across Beaver Creek Road. So I've got a pointer here, I think. So this crosswalk right here, and the turning movement, trying to make that right turn, would essentially, if there was a pedestrian there, have to wait for that and block that through traffic, which, maybe not during construction, but, or hopefully not during construction, but, you know, when the project's all complete and we've only got the one through lane there, how much is that gonna impact that through lane? And I think that's a valid point. And so we are looking at the timing of when that change would you know, maybe have a dedicated right turn lane there, when that would be warranted. Because that would include a new signal pole and probably some more improvements to that intersection.
Is there a possibility to separate the signal timing so motors go in one signal phase and the pedestrians go in a different signal phase, so they're not going both at the same time?
There is that potential. You know, you compromise the efficiency of the signal, right?
Yeah.
But there is that potential. And I'm not sure if the project team is considering that right now, but there are options for that. Yeah.
I've got a question. So it seems to me right now the traffic that's going south on Malala before it gets to Beaver Creek, the left turn lane
Before it
actually
gets,
backs up and blocks this street here. So it seems if you had more capacity for a left turn, if the one through here could be, so you have two possibilities to go left. This middle one, I'm looking at those three cars here. The middle one could either go straight or left. So you can get more traffic where you get the red circle up at the top. Oftentimes you can see that the left turners are already backed up in that middle lane.
yeah, so we're proposing 2 left turns.
Okay.
Is that your point?
Yes.
Yes. For a minute there, I thought you were proposing that second left could also have a through arrow. And I only know of one place, and maybe Mike knows more, but Lake Oswego has that scenario, and it's not a very good situation. So both of those would be dedicated left turns.
Okay, that's, yeah.
And what we're trying to show here is just this definitely in the afternoon is.
That was at 3:30 today.
That was it. Okay. Wow. You're busy today, huh? Oh, taking pictures. Yeah. So, there's no video here, right, Dan?
No.
Okay. So, I guess this is. So, did you have any questions about that segment beyond?
Is that proposed change going to happen at the very beginning of the project to try to alleviate traffic off of the route while you're doing construction?
We've actually talked about requiring that to be phase, the first phase.
1.1.
Yeah.
I have one other comment about the, with having more traffic going left on the Beaver Creek, that also helped with the transit route with Route 33, because when I'm riding it going northbound on Ball Avenue, the buses turn left onto Beaver Creek, or having to wait for the 2 through lanes to come through, and it causes backup for the bus. So I think that Tri would also appreciate having this be 2 left lanes there, because that would only be 1 through lane to deal with. Just wanted to add that comment.
And the other thing we heard from the community is frustration right here. One of those commenters was on our Transportation Advisory Committee, or is on our Transportation Advisory Committee. He's not here tonight, but Vance, this short merge lane right here has kind of creates some hate and discontent and a little bit of road rage right there. So, so this is another piece. I'm going to point again. This little median right here has been a small point of contention. I think it's small because this prevents the right in and right out into this driveway, which is pretty heavily used. The traffic counts in this location are pretty high. And so the question was, why do it? Or why not put yet another signal there? And, our response is basically signal. Well, the other thing that this does is it helps provide a pretty long queue here because we don't have vehicles using that center turn lane that stacks back. We need as much capacity in this lane as we can to make that left turn onto Beaver Creek Road. And in the future, we actually anticipate needing yet another lane there another left turn lane. So that's, I don't remember the date or when that was kind of projected, but what year?
2031.
2031 was when that was projected. So I'll be retired by then, so we're not going to worry about that. How's that? And we want to accommodate this crosswalk here. So, doing that with the allowing the right turns out of the driveway with a pedestrian crosswalk there, we're trying to space these crosswalks to the, where they make sense. We've got a lot of driveways, some of which only have really one way in or one way out. So some of those we're trying not to limit, and yet still, allow those pedestrians to cross. That was a big part of the grant, right? Was to try to get residents from the west side of the road to the business district on the east side of the road. And so these are going to impact our efficiency in driving down Malala Avenue, just because if there's a pedestrian there, they may have a green light, but we're going to still provide for some safer pedestrian crossings. But the demand is definitely high there. There's not a time that we don't go to lunch and see, pedestrians crossing there kind of naturally, usually at a diagonal or sprinting across or doing something like that, but they tend to cross there pretty regularly. So we think that's the right thing to do. We think it'll help with the efficiency. It'll definitely, I think right now when people exit from that driveway, they're, especially at peak hour, they're doing it at a kind of a risky situation. If you're a bicyclist along there, you got to worry about that vehicle turning wide as they speed kind of across the center turn lane and the through lane, the northbound through lane. So again, we think that's a good deal. The other thing I'll mention on this slide that's true for Gaffney Lane as well is this center lane is currently striped as a through and a left, and then this is a right only. And that's been problematic for pedestrians. So the pedestrian gets that a crossing signal, and at the same time the vehicle gets a green signal that could happen at the same time. And so we're trying to provide a dedicated left turn there so that the timing of that signal would be such that if a pedestrian had activated a pedestrian button, and they would never see that, there wouldn't be that conflicting movement. So we think that's, we still got to worry about right turns, and we're still advocating for pedestrians to always make eye contact with those vehicles before they step out there, even if they have a walk signal. But that can be a problem too, right? Right turn, if you're in the crosswalk, that can be a problem. But it's been more problematic, as we've seen here more recently in Oregon City, for that left turn movement. And the other thing is buffered bike lane. So it's not a huge difference, but there's a couple of feet of buffer between the travel lane and the bike lanes. And we're also doing a lot more with the green striping to kind of indicate the bike lanes. So we think that's an advantage. This slide just kind of shows that while I know we're limiting that one driveway with a median, there are many access opportunities for this shopping center. There's been some concern because some of these back entrances only have this narrow little drive-through between the buildings, but there are other access points around that can be made there. So we think that's still a better option. Same kind of lane configurations at Gaffney Lane. Both of these intersecting roadways, again, we're kind of constrained. Burgerville in particular, I think we're still going to have to move some of their frontage there a little bit, but it's pretty tight through those lanes are relatively narrow, and we're trying to accommodate bikes with sharrows and those kind of things. But and there's not much we can do with reconfiguration of those roadways based on the existing businesses. So we're trying to eke out as many efficiencies and safety measures as we can.
What do you mean by the Sharrows point? I mean, like a big gap in the buffer bike lane where we go for Sharrows to buffer bike lane and back? Is that what you mean by that?
No, I'm trying to remember Gaffney Lane, for instance. I don't think we have room for a bike lane there. So especially when we get to the
So
3-lane
side
section, so the side streets.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Gaffney to Fur is really mostly about, that's the one section of Malala Avenue that really has got wide driveways, not very good sidewalks, or sidewalks that's pretty polluted with power poles and other obstacles. And for the most part, it's missing across most of that frontage. And then First Street is another signal that was really kind of warranted based on some of the backups that we have on First Street, and it provided yet another pedestrian crossing. So we've decided to go ahead and include that, or at least recommend that to the City Commission to include that signal with this project. We're proposing a mid-block crosswalk here, which puts it 675 feet from the First Street signal. This one was another point of contention. There's an existing crosswalk right there with a little island. So you've got the Wilco driveway coming out, and you've got Garden Meadow coming out. And well, we haven't had, as far as I know, we haven't had pedestrian car accidents there. We've definitely, that island gets hit all the time. So we've spent a lot of time putting up cones and things like that there to kind of better delineate that. It was a condition of approval when Wilco redeveloped. We're proposing to allow, there'll still be the ADA ramps there, but it won't be a striped crosswalk. And I think the neighborhood was a little frustrated with that, in that they liked the idea of being able to walk down the street and cross here and go, if they go to Wilco, they're there, or go to the post office, or go to Fred Meyer. And we're now suggesting that if you're going to Fred Meyer or Wilco, you come to this crosswalk, and you may have a little bit of a detour to get there. Or if you're going to the post office, cross here and come down here. And there are some driveways that need to be crossed, but we still think that that's the better option than having a pedestrian vehicle high potential conflict area right there. Plus, I think there was concern about there was concern about that pedestrian crosswalk being too close to the signal. And again, one more crosswalk, trying to fit that in a place where there's good sight distance as you come around the corner, aligned well with some of the pedestrian generators and some of the neighborhood traffic. So we've got one more there. So there's some other considerations that are just kind of being, beyond all these features that we're adding or changing. We're thinking about nighttime construction, so there's residents along there that are going to be affected by that. Definitely have to have flag. The whole roadway section is reconstructed, so we're going to curb to curb will be, I think it's like a 24-inch road section. I don't know if you've seen it lately, but it's pretty significant roadway section. And and almost all of that roadway is built on something less than what we need, so we'll be digging most of it out. I think we were looking at some value engineering, maybe from Wilco out. We may not be able to afford to do that, but definitely through the intersections, we're going to be doing that.
Are you guys planning to recycle and reuse some of that material out of asphalt? And
the asphalt will definitely be recycled. Wouldn't be surprised if some of the road base is as well, but I don't know the answer to the recycling of the road base, but definitely asphalt anymore. Most of that gets recycled. We're putting in signals, so signals, sometimes there's some pretty long lead times, and we're actually building an 18-inch water line.
Yeah.
Pretty much from one end of the project to the other, so, that, trying to deal with business access and making sure, because, their customers we're not losing too many customers to businesses, and then obviously access to the fire station and the post office. These are real quick, couple of concept designs. We've really scaled back, I think. We've heard a lot of feedback of folks not necessarily that excited about landscape and medians. So I think our median treatments for the most part are going to be something similar to what you see on 99E, where there's the exposed rock in the median. So it's cemented in, but it's kind of got a boulder look to it and not so much trees and landscape like that. But on this end, we're still hoping to kind of have a bit of a gateway concept there. And so I think we're still considering either like more of a basalt wall concept or these metal panels. We've kind of got some examples of metal panels that we've used in different projects. So I think both those have potential. I can't remember, did we land on a favorite? Okay, so we're headed towards the basalt. We had the open house in July. We're expecting 90% plans this month, final plans and bidding early 2020. And if we can get all that done, we'll be done by late 2020. So there you go.
Is there a construction plan for like access through it for bikes, pedestrians especially? Are they going to be sharing the road with motorists or having their own separate area to go through this construction area? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that right now. Obviously, we need to accommodate all the modes, and we're gonna do that. It's going to be a challenge in some places, but the fact that we're leaving the sidewalk on one side, it should be a little easier there, but it's going to be some tough spots, especially Gaffney and Claremont. But we'll let the experts help us figure that out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have two citizens that want to comment, Michael Ard and William Gifford. I think I'm on the right track this time. I was just so anxious to hear you talk, William, I just couldn't wait.
Again, Mike Ard with Ard Engineering. I'm here actually representing Craig Danielson because he was unable to attend himself. And basically, they've got a successful business on the west side of Molalla Avenue, north of Beaver Creek there. And like any good business owner, they're a little bit wary of change, want to make sure that it's not going to negatively impact them. And they wanted some reassurance that the design isn't going to create problems for them. So they hired me to review the design and analysis, and that really has been my goal, is to either determine that this is acceptable and let them know that, or to point out concerns. I haven't been able to have a detailed conversation with Craig as of yet, but I did review the study material that was put together by Kittleson and Associates for this, and there were a few questions that were raised in that process. I'll start by mentioning, just because Bob mentioned traffic volumes at the intersection of Holcomb and Redland in the vicinity of 9,000 ADT and potentially doubling in the future, that right now that intersection of Beaver Creek at Molalla accommodates 33,315 vehicles per day, and that is projected to go up to 43,520 in the planning horizon analysis that was done for year 2040 conditions. So it is a pretty high volume intersection that we're talking about here. Things that that raised questions in my mind as I reviewed the study. First of all, I saw that the count data that was collected for the project and the analysis was collected in November of 2018. And the reason that I point that out is that in November, you kind of get rainy conditions and a little bit dark conditions. So you may see a little bit of a suppressed pedestrian and bicycle demand versus summer conditions, and particularly for a project that's focused on bikes and peds, that may be a concern. There were some pedestrians and bicyclists that were observed in the count data, so it isn't completely absent that, but I wonder whether those volumes may end up being higher, and particularly as we talk about an improvement project that's going to make it safer and more comfortable to walk and bike in the vicinity. As we look into the future, I'd expect those November 2018 volumes to represent an extremely low estimate of what the future could hold in the year 2040. What I saw, though, in the analysis is that those numbers were stable. And it concerned me for a couple of reasons. The first is that as I look at the volume to capacity ratio, so in other words, the portion of the signal cycle that's expected to be used for the southbound through lane going south on Molalla Avenue through Beaver Creek, what I was seeing is VC ratios that were projected in the vicinity of 1.09 in the midday, 1.05 in the PM, so a little bit over capacity. And as we talk about a shared through right lane, it's going to have some conflicts with pedestrians crossing in that crosswalk. So I wonder what happens when we succeed with this project and we have more bikes and we have more peds and therefore more conflicts there, and we're already at overcapacity for that lane, so we go to significantly overcapacity when we can't use the through capacity of that lane because vehicles are stopped for those conflicts. With the single combined through and right lane, what that means is anytime somebody wants to turn right and there's a pedestrian conflict, they will stop, and there isn't another lane for through vehicles to go around in, so they're just going to stack up. Looking at the volume of traffic, the projections show there's still going to be higher demand in that through right lane than what there is in the combined two left turn lanes at this intersection. So I do expect that the queuing would increase at this intersection as a result of the project. Part of that's intentional. I understand you're trying to discourage traffic from going down Molalla Avenue and encourage them to make the left turn onto Beaver Creek and then onto 213, even if their intended destination is out toward Molalla, and sort of the straight line approach is the current natural route. The design does encourage, by virtue of those two left turn lanes, people to take the slightly longer route and go around. But usually that doesn't happen until you get to saturation. So if they can't get through the other way, then they pick a route that may be a little bit longer and a little bit less convenient. One other thing, actually two other things that I noticed. One is in the comparison between the no build and the build scenarios for the year 2040. There's a strange discrepancy that I saw in the assumed cycle length. Under background conditions with no build, the cycle length for that signal varied between 100 seconds for the afternoon peak hour to 110 seconds for the evening peak hour. And under the build scenario, it was consistent at 140 seconds. So it seems like there's a little bit of an apples to apples problem there. That I'd kind of like to see the results for 140 seconds versus 140 seconds. Minor thing there. Much bigger thing is my concern about what happens when the pedestrian volumes go up. And then the other thing was that this intersection is a high crash intersection as documented in the study. It does have the highest crash rate of any of the intersections on the corridor, and those are primarily vehicular crashes. The reason that I raise that is because whenever I'm dealing with a high crash intersection, there's a part of me that's thinking, okay, are we going to make this worse or are we going to make this better? And how might we do that? The concern that I have is that we have two southbound lanes approaching this intersection, one of which is going to be converted into a trapped lane. In other words, if you're in the left lane, you're going to feed into one of those two left turn lanes, whether you wanted to or not. And I do expect that there are going to be some people that are in that left lane, possibly not paying attention, just driving along on their merry way, used to be able to go straight through the intersection, and they expect to in the future too. And then they get to the intersection, and suddenly they see that arrow in their lane, and they think, well, I didn't want to turn. So now at the last minute, they're trying to cut into what's already a crowded lane, or possibly in the intersection itself do a merge. So you may see some increase in sideswipe type collisions within the intersection by virtue of having the trap lane there. With this being a high crash intersection, I think that's something that's worth looking at in a little bit of detail. As I said at the beginning, my primary concern in looking at this on behalf of Craig Danielson is to try to determine whether it's going to create problems for him. What I'm seeing right now, and what I would have to report to him right now, is that the increase in pedestrian volumes likely means that the volume to capacity ratio that's already projected in the future to be more than 1, in other words, more people trying to get through than what will actually fit, it may actually be worse than what's shown in the study by virtue of those added conflicts, that the queues in that southbound through lane are going to be much more significant than what you're seeing currently for that southbound left turn pocket. And that may cause some congestion along his frontage and difficulty in getting in and out of his driveways. So I definitely would be interested in seeing some tweaks to the analysis to accommodate, what's the price of success with our project? What if we do see more pedestrians and more bicycles on this corridor? What does it look like there? And make sure that the design accommodates that and make sure that we have something that's safe and functional for all users when we get done.
Any questions? I just make one comment. You mentioned vehicles trapped in the 2 left turn lanes that might be intending to go straight.
Yes.
And I think that's just a normal course of a traffic change. And people learn slowly that, hey, I shouldn't really be in this lane.
Hopefully the locals are going to figure it out.
I'll remember to be in the correct lane. And I think that happens with every traffic change you have.
Yeah, it is. We refer to it as a trap lane for a reason. It's an unexpected forced turn for some people. And hopefully as our GPS routing and things get better, people are going to be aware of that well in advance and be told, get in the right lane in order to go straight. So hopefully that's going to be less of a concern in the future.
Yeah.
Mike, one thing, I don't have the numbers, but the accident, I know right now that left turn lane, the one that we're talking about, I think actually both of them, but they have the flashing yellow permissive, and that at this intersection has shown some problems in that vehicles tend to follow one another without thinking as much about the oncoming traffic. So
you're seeing turning and angle.
We're seeing a lot of T-bone crashes there. This configuration, while in a lot of cases I like those permitted left turns because they make things more efficient and you don't have to sit through a red light if there's no oncoming traffic. In this scenario, that option will no longer be permitted. So in theory, we should have less of those kind of accidents with this configuration. So
I would agree with that.
I'll say it again. This project is a compromise in just about every segment, and the number, I hadn't quite heard the number stated like you said in terms of the vehicle, because I hadn't asked specifically about that traffic count at that intersection, but it does move a lot of traffic, and more in the future. So it's that's one of the reasons why we've asked Kittleson to look at this movement. I think it was the brilliant William Gifford who pointed out this same concern to me, and we kind of heard that pretty loud and clear. So we added some scope to Kittleson's effort to look at that dedicated right turn lane and figure out, do we really have to take that on now? Because it's probably likely to be yet another major signal cost that we hadn't planned on, like the First Street signal, and can we see how this goes and deal with that maybe in 10 or 15 years. I don't know. So we'll see. I don't know that we've seen that result yet.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at where the signal poles are yet either,
they're right in the
it figures. They usually are.
So conversion of the southbound dual lefts can happen with minimal changes to the traffic signal. We don't need to move the poles.
Dana, could you get to a mic so they can...
Oh, good idea.
So the dual southbound turn lanes can be implemented pretty easily with minor changes to the traffic signal. It's changing the through head to a left turn head and changing the striping. The dual northbound lanes that we mentioned, That project isn't anticipated to be needed until 2031, and it also requires that we change out the length of the mast arm, which is the arm that hangs over traffic, because we need to add those additional signal heads. So that has impacts to the signal pole that's located at the Texaco, and because we don't need that today, we will build the pavement, and that's why you see that wide yellow striped section. So when we come back, it's merely a change to the traffic signal and changes, to those kind of things.
Okay.
It's a signal project. And so what I anticipate is when we get the results back of the need for the right turn pocket, if it's warranted, that those two items, because that would necessitate the moving of the signal pole at the corner of the bank, that those two could be combined into a future project that address those needs that we don't need today, but we know we'll need in the future. And so that would be a project that we would include in our CIP list and program for future years. So we can solve some of the problems today, and we can look at how we fix the remaining ones in the future.
Yeah, so that project that she's talking about, the dual northbound left turn lanes, will actually change the operation from the numbers that I gave you as well. The volume to capacity ratio would decrease to 0.97 during the midday and 0.99 during the evening peak hour. So just barely within capacity for that southbound through lane once the dual left turn lanes are installed. And again, that's for year 2040 conditions. But it still has that concern regarding potential increased conflicts with bikes and peds, which might mean that 0.99 is a little overly optimistic, and maybe we're going to be over 1.0. So if you're having Kittleson explore that right turn pocket, I'd also ask them at the same time to consider, what's a reasonable estimate of growth in ped and bike volumes that we could put in there, both seasonal, since we're talking about taking November numbers and turning them into maybe summer peak numbers, and then also looking out, 20 years of growth at 1.5% is what you assumed for motorized vehicles. So that could add up to a significant difference in the ped bike volumes as far as analyzing the need for the southbound right turn lane.
So Mike, we'll definitely try to articulate this through the recording. I don't know if you've written any of this up and
I haven't yet. I'm thinking that my client is going to want me to do that anyway, though, so I can definitely get that to you.
Yeah, if you want to share it with us, and we're happy to share it with Kittleson. They've been real helpful with this so far. So
yeah,
I have one thing that I'd like to give more data on with what you're saying with the with having rerouting people on Beaver Creek. You were saying how they're trying to get on to 213. I thought they were going to try to get on Beaver Creek and stay on Beaver Creek, go down, because new Beaver Creek development is going on the east side CCC and going into Beaver Creek community down there, and the commuters into that that area. I thought that one reason why we're trying to go left on Beaver Creek is so they can go down Beaver Creek, continue down it, not to get on 213. So that's one thing I'd like to, if there's any data to show which route they would use, whether they're going to continue down Beaver Creek or they're going to take a left on Beaver Creek and take it right on 213.
Well, there's a change in the traffic volumes where about 150 vehicles off the top of my head are converted from going southbound through to making the southbound left turn. And unless those people were going through the Clackamas Community College campus to arrive at their destinations on Beaver Creek, I think it's unlikely that those are vehicles that are destined for that area. There will be increased development in the Beaver Creek area that's going to increase the volume of left turn movements, but that wouldn't correspond to a decrease in the through movement unless we're seeing a diversion of trips that are actually trying to go south on 213.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, again, the number that Kittleson was sharing with us, I don't remember, but it was this reasonable volume. I think they assumed like 20% or 25% of those would start using that as opposed to going through Omaha. But their route is Lino area further south on 213, so it's unlikely that they would go through on Beaver Creek Road when they're really kind of headed south on 213. So they would make the right at Beaver Creek, which is a low count movement for that intersection. But still, I mean, this stuff always surprises. We've clearly got, you know, congestion at Beaver Creek and 213 as well. So it's just sometimes trying to eke out as many efficiencies as we can on these facilities when we're really pretty constrained. So there is, you know, John, you pointed out before our meeting the likelihood that vehicle counts would in the future go down, right? So maybe that's what the thing that we're aiming for. But William, you probably have something brilliant to say.
I'm waiting for the chair to recognize.
I was just going to say we need to move along here. Mr. Gifford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is William Gifford, and I still live in Oregon City. Before I address my regular presentation here, the solution, I think, to this is what I always come up with is a roundabout. God, I would love to have a roundabout there, and then all this would go away. Okay, with that said, I just love roundabouts. I want to point out that I feel like I have some standing regarding this project, insofar as a lot of people worked hard, and I worked on the political aspect of getting this 3.8 million out of Metro, and John knows well that I was instrumental in that, getting that through C4. The original aim of the project was Molalla from Beaver Creek to 213, and as John opened his statements, that has expanded. I don't know that, has Metro been told that the monies that they have given us for Beaver Creek to 213 would now be beyond Beaver Creek? And maybe not much of that money is going to be required other than some paint. But I also want to point out that this particular piece of the project was not mentioned at all at the 30% design stage in the open houses, or the big open house that some of us attended, not everyone. But it was sort of sprung upon us at the 60% design phase, and there was no consultation, there was no public process, there was no neighborhood association review. I want to point out that I am speaking for the Hillendale Tower Vista Neighborhood Associations, of which I'm the land use chair. But there was not really a public presentation as to this particular part of it until that 60% design, and I think a lot of people didn't realize that this was extending the project somewhat. I also want to point out that the piece of Molalla between Beaver Creek Road and Warner Milne, if you can picture that, and none of your pictures went that far down, but that's the only 4-lane section of Molalla. As you remember when we did the 7th Street improvement, so there's 4 lanes there, you can count them. When we did the 7th Street improvement coming up through Molalla, we took that from a 4-lane to a 2-lane with a middle left turn lane. And when you get past this intersection, going farther south, it will again be a 3-lane basically with a middle left turn lane, right? So it's a 2-lane with a middle left turn lane. This 2-block section is really the only section, and I thought it was odd that it goes from 2 lanes to 4 lanes to 2 lanes. It's kind of the opposite of what they're doing on 213, where we're going from 2 lanes to 4 lanes to 2 lanes. The other way. I think you understand what I'm saying. This photograph, I'm concerned, a little slightly disingenuous. I was on this very intersection. I mean, I drive this daily. A half an hour before this picture was taken, and it didn't look like that. As a matter of fact, if you would go back to that previous slide and understand that this map is superimposed upon an actual photograph, I don't think that's an artist's drawing in the shadow relief under there, and you'll see the number of cars that are in that left turn pocket. not extensive. I was looking on Google Earth, and their photographs are very similar, that it's not always backed up, and I've never seen it backed up past Colton. And again, I drive this daily. So the proposal to put two left turn lanes there eliminates one of the through southbound lanes and makes it both through lane and right turn lane. There's been a lot of discussion about pedestrian traffic, but even someone turning right onto Beaver Creek, if there was no pedestrians, is still going to slow down, which slows down everyone in that queue. And we saw a similar situation just in the last couple of months at the disaster which backed traffic up all the way down the hill at the intersection of Warner Milne and Molalla when they were putting in the emergency care center, and the fiasco of them having to build a little retaining wall around the outside of it, and then they closed the traffic, and people that were trying to turn right off of Molalla to go down Warner Milne stopped everybody all the way back up there. And again, that's just a one lane down there. And it was one of the most inconvenient traffic situations that I've seen in Oregon City. And I think I've seen a lot. So I'm concerned about not just the pedestrians, although that's a concern also because that stops things, but it's still going to be a slowdown for the right turn traffic. I'd rather that there was a right turn lane there. The problem seems to be to defer the traffic from going on to Molalla. So if we want to make it easier for people to go down to, and I appreciate Mr. Atkinson's comment about future development out on the employment areas across from the college and so on. If this is supposed to make it easier for people to go that way, that's an argument that I hadn't heard before that I think has some merit. But the argument that it's going to reduce traffic on Molalla doesn't cut it for me. There's still going to be traffic that wants to go to the college, that wants to go to the post office, that needs to go to the fire station for whatever reason. There's businesses all along there and the church and so on, that people are still going to be needing to go that way, and having two lanes taking them off of where they want to go is not going to reduce their need to continue on southbound on Molalla. So I'm concerned that taking a lane away from them is going to bottle things up, especially since that same lane will be used to turn right. So and I hate to sound just rash, but it does sound as though this is a solution that's looking for a problem. And it seems as though there could be some other alternatives that would not be that drastic, I don't think. If you look at this map again, you'll see that there's a through lane, which is also a right turn lane at the bottom, two left turn lanes, but look above that, there's still two lanes there. There's no reason to have two lanes there. There's really no reason to have two lanes there because it's just going to go down to one lane a half a block later. So why have two lanes above there? If those left turn lanes were moved over a little bit, maybe you'd have room for a right turn lane at the bottom and a through lane. But it does seem odd to me that there's two lanes up there. When it's coming from one lane, going northbound from Molalla, I mean, and they're wanting to put eventually two left turn lanes northbound, which is still going to leave only one through lane coming northbound. So why would there be those two lanes there? The only argument that's been proposed to me is that, well, you can't have traffic coming northbound off of Molalla through Beaver Creek and then make a slight jog to get into that far right lane. I don't think that's insurmountable. I've seen much worse intersections. So it seems to me as though if you're convinced that you need 2 left turn lanes there ought to be some other solution than what this proposed is. And what I'm asking is that you go back and look and see what other possible solutions, because I haven't heard any other possible solutions. I'm not asking for a roundabout, but something other than using that 1 lane for through traffic, which will be slowed by any right turn, whether there's a pedestrian there or not. Because I don't think it's going to achieve the desired effect of lessening traffic on Molalla, whether it's construction time or any time. It's just, I don't think it's going to solve the problem that's perceived. I'd like to see some other solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Gifford. I'll start by saying that's a very interesting proposal. I think it has some validity to it. Those 2 lanes over there go for 2 blocks or 3 blocks?
No, half a block more.
Well, okay, they go from Beaver Creek to Warner Milne, and whatever length that is. Yeah, so sounds kind of weird.
My response is, and I could be wrong about this, but we've asked Kittleson to look at the idea of the right turn lane, whether they're looking at the overall intersection, because they are trying to plan for that future left turn lane, northbound left turn lane as well. They have been the innovators on this project, and we can share with them that suggestion. I want to say that we have talked about that, and I'm trying to remember maybe, Dana, do you remember any outcome on that?
We would have to redo the existing signal poles and mast arms to accommodate the signal heads.
We would definitely have to do that. Could that, when could that happen? But I agree, it's an interesting piece of, where you've got basically 3 lanes on either side of it, and 5 lanes on the other side. The same argument could be made, this goes to 3 lanes and just, less than a half a block. So, but it wouldn't be that right turn concern, right? But we do see problems with that. We're pretty sure that trying to move the lanes to align to accommodate the future 2 northbound left turn lanes, if we do that, we would lose this kind of yellow striped area right here, right? And that's where that future left turn will be. So, I'm a little bit, it's interesting to play this out and design this in this Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. I guess my thought is good ideas, good discussion. I appreciate the details of that and the thought. We're happy to share that with Kittleson and let them work through it, but I don't think we're going to solve that tonight. And I just want to make sure if we ask them to do that, and their answer is no, stay the course, that that's the problem that we've come up with on some of the other issues, is like, well, that's just what the engineer is.
They would be able to make a presentation to the neighborhood associations?
Yeah, or provide the data, right? Provide the data.
There should be some conversation.
Okay, just recognizing that there's costs associated with doing that as well. So.
Costs associated with not doing it.
I will say I went to neighborhood association meeting last week, it was, I believe, at Gaffney Lane. I live in the Gaffney Lane neighborhood, and this project was discussed there. So I just want to clarify that there has been discussion about this project at neighborhood association meetings, because I've been attending them. So just wanted to point that out.
William, the project scope doesn't include a 90% open house, but there's, if we're talking about needing to provide that specifically to the neighborhood or to TAC, I think that would be, given the amount of discussion we've had with it here, I'd rather have them come and express that to TAC. Would that be, so does that make sense to you folks? Because I think that's the right audience, and anybody from the neighborhood that wanted to attend could come and hear that. If we're going to spend that kind of money for an additional meeting time.
Well, all due respect to the experts, Kittleson and Associates and whatnot, they have a whole lot of real brain power working for them, but occasionally, as in every case, a plain old, down-to-earth, plain old citizen, I'm not accusing you of being down-to-earth or anything, but, you know, they sometimes come up with a kind of an innovative, maybe not thought of or pursued strong enough idea that's, I think that idea is worth them looking into.
Yeah,
Really
I think I've said that we will have them look into it. It's more
Yeah.
about how to present it.
Yeah.
Well, I think this could be a right medium, and then people could attend that. And
It's also a recorded meeting. People can hear it if they want to look at it later.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on that subject? Okay, now if I can find my agenda among all these crazy notes. Public Works Report, item 5C.
So I don't have any presentation necessarily on the flashing beacon at Malala and Barkley Hills Drive, other than to acknowledge that it is our intent. We've talked to the neighborhood about taking the existing crosswalk at Malala and Barkley Hills, and we've done some work, which was we removed a couple of street trees, and I think we added some signage there to indicate pedestrian ahead. But the long-term plan is to add again, another one of these rapid flashing pedestrian beacons at that location. I talked to the neighborhood about it, and I let them know that that was our intent. It still is our intent. We just haven't made a lot of progress on it. So we've got a new engineer that's starting on Monday. They're going to take over a lot of the Malala project as well, but we think that might be, that engineer or another engineer might be good to get a little break. We're seeing a little slowdown in the development side of the house, so we may point one of those engineers at that little project. So just know that that's still in our interest to get accomplished. Vance is going to talk about the Malala Avenue and Pearl Street study.
Gentlemen, I'm not just going to sit here all night. Good conversation, by the way, from everybody this evening. I have two quick things. Malala and Pearl, where we had the fatality and then the injury to the young man on the bicycle, well, pushing his bicycle. I want to let the board know that right about the last TAC meeting, myself, Dana, Jason Thornburg, transportation manager, met with the county to have a discussion about steps moving forward. At that time, it was decided before we just made changes that in light of this intersection that we needed to do a proper road study or traffic audit on that. So we hired DKS to perform that duty. They have been to the field to collect data a couple times. Dana, myself, Jason Thornburg met with DKS and the county again a week and a half ago. They presented just some concepts of what they are going to propose in their final draft for improvements. There's certainly some low-hanging fruit there that are inexpensive and easy to implement. Some things such as potentially removing some parking stalls and restriping the intersection, possibly a bulb out on the west side of Malala, Pearl, some things like that are a little more expensive and a little more into that. They told me today that they'll have a draft ready for myself, Dana, John if he wants to, and the county to look over, and that the final draft we should have in about 2 weeks. So what I'd like to propose is present to you folks that final draft at the next STAC meeting. And I was thinking too, if I'd like to ask DKS if they'd like to do that presentation. So that's where we're at on the Malala Pearl traffic study. So some good work from DKS, and I've mentioned this before, but I can't say it enough. Our partners at the county, especially in signals and traffic, just have really been outstanding to work with and a very good help for the city in that regard. So, lastly, the Kenema 20-mile-per-hour family-friendly zone update. You may or may not know there were some PMUF projects in that area. There was overlay, some slurry seal. That's all completed now as of about a week ago. And Jason and his staff, they have the thermoplastic, they have the signage, they have the plans. So as weather permits, they'll be implementing those traffic markings and signs in that area. Okay?
Okay.
Any question on either? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is future agenda items. Does anybody have anything they want to put on future agenda?
I believe my topic's already been put on the new next agenda from the email that I saw, so I'm good. Thank you.
There was, and I thought I wrote it down, Christina Robertson Gardner is, wants to present at our October meeting on the Beaver Creek Road, what are we calling it? Concept design?
Concept plan, I
Beaver Creek
believe.
Road concept design, which is more about, it's less about all the zoning and land use actions that are happening on there and more about what Beaver Creek Road could look like in the future. So, so she would like to come next month.
Yeah, that'd be interesting, as long as she keeps it to traffic and not all that other stuff that's going on out there.
Rigmarole. Well, it is Christina, so we'll give her that
Well,
message.
let's keep her under control. If you don't, I will. No, I'm just kidding. I'm curious. I presented our argument for the crosswalks in Holcomb. What is our next step to get that done?
Money. Wow. We need some money.
Yeah, but you're going to spend the money somewhere.
Yeah, I would say the good news is they're all in the transportation system plan. Some of those are likely to be a requirement of future development. Mm-hmm. I can't remember where all of them are located, but some of them are in places where we've got existing curb and sidewalk. I'm thinking of the one down from the school. That one would be a relatively straightforward one to deal with.
The one on Swan would be.
Yeah, I think Swan.
Is there sidewalks?
church.
Is there sidewalks on both sides?
Yeah, there's.
Of Swan?
Yes, there. Yeah, there are.
Is there a development going in on that corner right now?
No.
That's Hunter.
There were a few
That's
houses
Hunter.
on the southwest corner. There were a few houses went in there, yeah.
So I don't want to answer that tonight necessarily specifically, but I mean, I hear you loud and clear. The money piece that I think is probably being spoken for more than it actually is, but you know, we've got the county implemented their vehicle registration fee. We're going to start seeing funding for that come in. We're wanting to utilize that money for projects that don't necessarily, they aren't necessarily adding capacity. So like those crosswalks, I don't recall whether or not I think there might be 39% of those would be SDC eligible, which means we could use the SDC pot for that. Although we're spending that pot down quite a bit with this project and the Myers project, but there may be some funding for that. But the other piece, the thing that we liked about the vehicle registration fee is that it was a mechanism for funding kind of the unfunded portion, which is the non-growth piece, right? So there's a lot of projects that we're talking about trying to fund that with. I think the Gardner School project, where the school district is doing some things, there's going to be some projects that we won't be able to require from their, there will be some projects that we probably will be able to require of their development, but there will be some other things that won't be required. So we really are kind of focused on that area, and there's been I get asked probably weekly about how we're going to move forward on the roundabout at Warner Parrott, Lynn, Leland. That's a big project. So dealing with some of this low-hanging fruit, I know Dana and I have talked about, could we pursue a grant to get maybe all those installed, all those pedestrian crosswalks installed, especially where there's not development potential and the sidewalks exist, so that we don't have to worry about that. But maybe Dana's probably got a better answer.
I'm gonna pop in just super quick. The kind of how you saw with the Malala project, that plan was done in 1999, 2001. So this has been a long haul to get the Malala project in this last phase. The 2005 Holcomb pedestrian plan was done, and we've made a little bit of progress. We got super close, 7 or 8 years ago on a grant. With the HB 2017 Safe Routes to School Infrastructure Fund, the Holcomb corridor is our most promising corridor for that grant funding program. And so in next, I don't remember if it's summer or fall, is the next deadline for that Safe Routes to School Infrastructure program. And we would be targeting the Holcomb corridor for a Safe Routes to School Infrastructure grant.
So there you go.
So that's our most likely opportunity. So we'll be reaching out to the neighborhood and the school district as we kind of take that 2005 plan, the grant criteria, and we create a project from that plan that meets that criteria that will score well. So we'll be looking to the neighborhood and the school district and maybe the PTA at the school to provide letters of support for that grant application.
Could you use as local matching some SDC money then that would go with that grant?
Yeah, we'd probably use some SDC, some vehicle registration, some gas tax, all those pieces.
Where's the county with that vehicle registration? I thought that was also being opposed or going back on the ballot, or not that?
No, it's passed.
moving forward.
It moved forward. I don't think we've seen any payments yet. There was some time.
Yeah, it hasn't started
Takes about
until
a year or so,
January
at least.
2020.
Yeah.
So,
That's when they start collecting fees?
Correct.
Okay, so then there'll be time after that.
So, it's not quick enough, but it never is.
Well, we're feeling neglected.
I had a quick question.
Do you feel a little sorrier for us? On
we just had to
Holcomb
find the right grant
Park
program
Place?
for you.
Well, we certainly hope so. I mean, that would be wonderful because the people look at other areas and they think, why not us? You've got a new nice flashing thing there at the library on 7th, and, that happened a few years ago. We've got new traffic signals on 12th and Washington, and all these things happen around, and yet you've got a long, long corridor with no safety provisions.
You said that grant application is in the spring, did you say?
Summer, fall.
Yeah, summer
Okay.
or fall.
Okay.
Our new staff member will be assigned to that, so he'll be digging into those criteria, looking back on previous projects that were awarded the grant, finding what helped them score well.
Okay.
If you could send some information to me explaining that, maybe I can go back to the neighborhood and give them at least some hope. You know what I mean? Something to grasp onto rather than, hey, we're talking, but we're being ignored again. That's what really happens.
I know that's the perception, but it's definitely not the action.
I'll be polite, John. You can talk about perception, but that is the fact of life. That's where the people are looking at is their perception of how they're being treated and how they're being listened to. So if you can provide us information that says, hey, they're thinking about us, I'll certainly pass it on to them. In fact, we have a general meeting next month. If I could have some ammunition to pass on to give the neighbors some hope.
But there's subdivision that just went in off the Holcomb, and I'm sure they were paying SDCs. Why some of those funds couldn't be redirected to these crosswalks?
Well, again, there's a possibility of that. We've got a 2-year adopted budget. That's not in that 2-year adopted budget. Could it be redirected? Possibly. Or, does it make more sense to wait until we get a grant that funds the full project and then we pair some of that money, we can budget for that and, move forward accordingly. That's how we did Malala, right? For Malala, it's been a multi-year effort to save money and, stock away money. These things, Holcomb, I think the neighborhood would also agree that it's not just crosswalks. They might see that as a shimmer of light, but I've heard, they'd like more sidewalks, right, as well. And so, and the last neighborhood grant that we applied for was for Holcomb. And that was, that package is still out there. And we've talked about other options like it does require a little bit of neighborhood buy-in in the form of, but there's local improvement districts. That's another way to fund projects like this. John, you've talked about that plenty of times to me, which is where, we, get buy-in from the neighborhood to fund a project that, there's usually some seed money to help on the city side of that as well. But it then, you define a project, you define a group of folks that would help contribute to that, and you form a local improvement district. And I know I've talked to at least 2 different neighbors on 2 different occasions who have asked the same question. And, at the time we're saying, well, that's an option, and they kind of get excited about it when they talk about it on the phone. We send them some information, and then we typically don't hear from them again because it requires property owners to buy in, to actually spend something out of their pockets. And so...
What is the estimated cost on one of those flashing pedestrian activated lights going in?
Well, the TSP states for each one of those crosswalks $35,000, but it doesn't say whether they're flashing lights or just plain crosswalk.
It kind of depends, there's certainly the set cost for the posts, the push buttons, the hardware to make that system run. But then if it triggers ADA, where you're into replacing ramps, or if you have to install ramps, so the number, unfortunately, to put in a crosswalk like that can vary greatly. At a minimum, if the ramps are good, you're probably 20,000.
So if you took an area that had new
that's just
new
putting in
sidewalks,
posts,
ADA
the signs,
compliant.
the push buttons, and the solar panel, and making it work.
Yeah.
That's at the very, very, very low end, and probably we don't have scenarios like that on Holcomb.
Yeah, well, like I said, the TSP, it states $35,000 for each of those. I'm sure that's just a standard price they put for a crosswalk.
Yeah.
Without looking at any details of any particular site.
Well, we can definitely share something for you, Bob, for the neighborhood that would, Holcomb's been on our radar for a long time. It's just, there's not a small project on Holcomb.
Oh, there isn't. But we'll just keep beeping out there on your radar.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I had a quick question. So, Ray, is your topic that you were writing your memo on, is that going to be on the agenda next time?
About the housing issue?
Yeah, with not having to analyze the traffic impact.
That's what my topic was trying to get to, yes.
Right, so that's going to be on the agenda next meeting?
That's how I understood it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because the way I understand that, let's just take the Sears property. You said 120 units could go in there?
124, yeah.
124. Now, if the developer say it's all zoned 10,000 square feet right now, lots, he can go in there and put a fourplex on every one of those lots. And technically, we couldn't stop it because it's mandated by the state law. So, just thinking, okay, instead of 124, you got 4 times that. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just taking the extreme, all jumping out on Holcomb, which with the master plan or the concept plan, I'm sure wasn't figuring on that kind of density. Mm-hmm. And so,
That state law has some implications, not just on traffic, but on water and sewer.
And
And
there's no transit there either, that's my concern.
transit, yeah.
You have all that housing density, there's no transit, there's a lot more cars. So that's the discussion I'm trying to get at, is this point.
Yeah, so I think the state intended it primarily for infill,
Correct.
and maybe if you had some dilapidated things, they'd pull those down and put a triplex or a duplex in, but developers don't need any more incentive to reduce their risk, their request for more lots and, more lots and fewer lots, so they can make the numbers work
So
for them.
Ray, are you presenting that, or is planning presenting that?
I think Laura is presenting that, from what I saw in the email.
Okay.
Yeah, there was,
I think that-
said that there were, I didn't catch, I don't remember the names, but they were willing to come in.
Someone from land use, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, land use, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that'll be helpful, because, I mean, you're outside of my realm of expertise, because the code changes that they're having right now, they're dealing a lot with the housing piece.
It kind of overlapped the internal or city effort to change the zoning, and then all of a sudden this thing got.
Yeah, so I don't know
on top
which
of it.
trumps which.
Yeah, I will just clarify, I think what land use is planning on discussing next month is current changes, the ones that happened over last summer with the city commission. The ones that I'm trying to get us to discuss about is what state law is requiring of us, which is not included in the summer changes that happened last summer. From what I've discussed with land use about this, and they said we've sort of put some changes in here, but they're not compliant with the state law yet, because the state law was like a month ago.
Yeah.
So, and to be compliant with that is like a year from now, I think it is, a year or two from now is when the state law requirement is. But I'm trying to get us to transportation land use to discuss that issue of making sure we don't have all these extra cars with more dense housing. So that's what I'm trying to discuss next month.
But I think that's the intent of the state, is to try to build more housing units and to put them in areas that already have service. And
correct.
There's places along Holcomb that you could put fourplex, and it makes sense.
There's just no transit there, though. That's my concern.
You got all of there is a bus runs there, but
it's not frequent, though.
It's going to have a huge impact, and transportation is going to be one of those impacted, so I think it's appropriate topic here, and get a run at it.
I agree. Yeah. I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but I would definitely agree if you could take an R10 development and put fourplexes on every lot. I don't know that the market is there for that, and that would come to pass. But if you did, it wouldn't just be transit that you'd need.
I've seen subdivisions with fourplexes in them, they call them great homes. And so instead of a row house, 4 row houses, you probably got a mental picture of that. This looks more like a large, very large home, and the units you enter different sides, so it looks like a great home, but it's actually a fourplex. So you can manage popping those down on lots all over the place. So, and maybe duplexes are more realistic in terms of what might happen, but still, you need to talk about it.
Well, I made some notes there just to clarify. I want to make sure that Laura or whoever comes is ready for that.
I don't think that law is intended for when you're creating new subdivisions.
But the point is, they opened the door, so that may not be the intent. They're looking at it as providing incentive for infill.
Correct.
To put a duplex in there or something like that. I don't think they spent much time saying, okay, you have a whole new development, you got 120 10,000 square foot lots. If the developer wanted to, he could put triplexes in everything, or a mix of tri and fourplexes, and that's the state law. You got to allow it. In other words, the state law says you cannot protect single-family zone at 10,000 square feet, or even at 8. Any single-family zone has to now be open.
To R1 or R2?
Pardon me?
Is it R1 or R2?
I'm just saying, if it's single family, that was the intent, which is 10 and 8 for us, right?
6.
Yeah, so the door's open and you can't close it.
Yeah, the intent of the law that they passed may not necessarily match what the developers will take advantage of.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anything else? This meeting is adjourned.